Hello and welcome to Friday of week one of summer school. We are finishing up The Lottery by Shirley Jackson. We've read the story, we've finished the story, we know the ending. Today is an analysis day. There's some things that when you dive deep into them, they're more disturbing than they may look on the surface. All right, and so here are the standards, the ideas that I wanted to get across to you as we read the story of the lottery. Currently, I have highlighted analyze how complex characters develop over the course of a text and interact with other characters to advance the plot or develop the theme. Well, that's Tessie Hutchinson. Um, when she comes in, she's like kind of happy-go-lucky, like haha, like she came in and she almost forgot what day it was. Like this event just comes and goes like two ships passing in the night. It's just something that happens and it just we move on um until she gets chosen. Then things get intense with her husband, with the other townspeople, um and we develop the theme. Now, the specific theme of the story, one of the themes, the one that I'm going to focus on the most, is the power of tradition. We do things just because we do things, and that's the way we've always done them. And maybe there's a better way. You can point to a lot of these examples. Um, you, you can look at politics. You can look at um, distance learning, for that matter. Um, how we're changing the way that we teach, we learn, we interact with teachers and other, our peers, our other students. Um, the sporting world is having to figure all of that out. This current sort of COVID-19 situation we're in is making us really question our traditions and are they working for the best? When things fully loosen up and we are back to normal, are we going to retain some of the things that we've done now? Um, because we're finding that there are some advantages to them. I don't know. We'll have to see. But let's go take a look at the story and look specifically at a few things surrounding Tessie Hutchinson. So I'm going to start here, and all of the things today that I want to highlight are highlighted in this orangish color. We're at a point now in the story where they're calling heads of households, so we know that the tone has been set. The people of the town are nervous. We don't know why as the audience yet. There's a bit of dramatic irony. Kind of a reverse dramatic irony, really. Um, but we are unaware of what's happening in the story. They know we're unsure, but the tone is such. There's a real juxtaposition, a real contrast between, um, setting up this nice, quiet, seemingly happy town, but they have what we find out now is a nasty tradition, right? So, this quick conversation. They do say, Mr. Adams said to Old Man Warner, who stood next to him, that over in the North Village, they're talking of giving up the lottery. Old Man Warner snorted. Pack of crazy fools, he said, listening to the young folks. Nothing's good enough for them anymore. Next thing you know, they'll be wanting to go back to living in caves. Nobody work anymore. Lived that way for a while. Used to be saying, lottery in June, corn be heavy soon. First thing you know, we'd be eating stewed chickweed and acorns. There's always been a lottery, he added petulantly. Bad enough to see young Joe Summers up there joking with everybody. So, Old Man Warner is the oldest man in the town. Uh, you have to kind of take that as for what it's worth. Could be 90, could be 100, who knows. But I think later in the story he says, 77th time I've been in the lottery. 77th time. So that means going back to when he was a little kid, he's made it through this lottery. His name has never been chosen. The odds of that, I imagine, are quite small. But we get our first inkling here as to why the lottery happens. Lottery in June, corn be heavy soon. There's some sort of ritual, some sort of sacrifice to, I don't know, the rain or good soil, or maybe the body serves as fertilizer. I don't know, but they figured if we sacrifice a body, we're going to have good crops. So that's what it used to be for. Another section that is really telling, and you don't really know how telling it is until you finish the story and you see the conclusion of the story. But going back now, it's um it's quite telling and it helps build that theme. The original paraphernalia for the lottery had been lost long ago, and the black box now resting on the stool had been put into use even before Old Man Warner, the oldest man in the town, was born. Mr. Summers spoke frequently to the villagers about making a new box, but no one liked to upset even as much tradition as was represented by the black box. There was a story that the present box had been made with pieces of wood from the box that preceded it, the one that had been constructed when the first people settled down to make a village here. Every year after the lottery, Mr. Summers began talking again about a new box, but every year the subject was allowed to fade off without anything being done. It grew shabbier every year. Um, there was another piece here that I wanted to point out about how the town was grown, or had grown. Mr. Summers had been successful in having slips of paper substituted for the chips of wood that had been used for generations. Chips of wood, Mr. Summers had argued, had been all very well when the village was tiny, but now the population was more than 300 and likely to keep on growing. It was necessary to use something that would fit more easily into the black box. Notice how life is changing. People in the North Village are giving up the lottery. Their town is getting bigger. Um, but nothing, the traditions themselves they remain the same. And also the black box that grows shabbier every year and this three-legged stool, they're old, shabby, broken, kind of like the tradition itself. Now let's get on with more about Tessie Hutchinson. Bill Hutchinson got the black dot. So now the family themselves have to choose, and from there we decide who gets sacrificed to the so that the corn grows. She responds, "You didn't give him enough time to take any paper he wanted. I saw you. It wasn't fair." My question to you right now is, what is she arguing? If you said that she is saying that the tradition isn't fair, the tradition isn't right, you're wrong. What she's saying is, she's not questioning the tradition at all. What she's saying is, you didn't give him enough time to choose the piece of paper he wanted, as if random draw had anything to do with it, right? It's she's just mad that she got picked at this point. She's not questioning the tradition itself, which is what obviously at this point we should be questioning. So it gets decided. And well, everyone, that was done pretty fast. Now we've got to be hurrying a little more to get done in time. Bill, he said, you draw for the Hutchinson family. You got any other households in the Hutchinsons? And then Mrs. Hutchinson chimes in and says, there's Don and Eva. Make them take their chance. And Mr. Summers replies with, daughters draw with their husbands' families, Tessies. You know that as well as anyone else. So she has this grown daughter who is now married and lives in the town to this Don. But her thought is the more people who can draw for the black dot, the less chance there is that she gets picked and we learn stoned here at the end. She wants her daughter in the drawing. She wants her own daughter in the drawing. She wants to add them to the pool. They're free and clear. They get to go on another year. Maybe in this next year things change. They don't have such an absurd lottery anymore. But no, she wants them to be part of this second drawing. And the townspeople are like, no, Tessie, that's not how this goes. So then Bill Jr. says, Bill says there's Bill Jr., Nancy, and little Dave, and Tessie and me. We go on, some back and forth. We find out that it's Tessie, right? And we get to this paragraph. It says, although the villagers had forgotten the ritual and lost the original black box, they still remembered to use stones. It speaks directly to the lost meaning of the tradition, yet we still do what is in fact the most morbid part of that tradition. The pile of stones the boys had made earlier was ready. There were stones on the ground with the blowing scraps of paper that had come out of the box Delacroix selected as stones so large that he had to pick with both hands and turned to Mrs. Dunbar. "Come on," he said. "Hurry up." The children had stones already, and someone gave little Davy Hutchinson a few pebbles. "Davy Hutchinson is going to go throw stones at his mother until she dies." "That's morbid. That's terrible." And then at the very end, "It isn't fair. It isn't right," Mrs. Hutchinson screamed, and they were upon her. There's your bit of verbal irony, right? You and I, as the audience, as we read this, we know that we're talking about the absurdity of this tradition. We should stop this. It isn't fair. It isn't right. She is, in fact, not questioning that. She is questioning, or she's mad that Bill didn't get to choose the slip that he wanted, and then she couldn't add her own daughter into the pool of potential deaths. There are stories similar to this. You've got stories like the Hunger Games, that are like this. Uh, and of course, you can take a bit of reality to this and say, why don't people just move? Right? Why are they putting up with this? Well, the same is true of the Hunger Games. Why don't they just leave? Like, you can't. But that's not the point here. The point is to highlight, and fiction does this so well, sometimes the gruesome nature of humanity and how we get into these, how cruel we can be to each other, and how um, we sort of, in this case, get stuck in our ways. Fiction does a great job of highlighting an aspect of society, blowing it up and making it, kind of blowing it out of proportion, yet we can all relate. If I say to you, well, I just kind of explained it at the beginning of the video, what are some traditions that we do just because we do, and we don't even know why we do them? Well, I think we're seeing that with the distance learning and sports program, or professional sports, and some things going on in politics and in our own state. We're starting to see a lot of those things. So as we wrap up here today, I want you to consider a couple of things. Did you pick up on those theme-driven points? Um, did you recognize the change in character of Tessie Hutchinson? How she was just sort of folksy at the beginning, and completely changed her tune as the story progressed. So, if you were picking up on those things on the scale that I'm gonna put up right now, and I should make very clear that this scale is actually the inference scale, the inference questions, not the complex character ones. But that's sort of the thing about English, is that they don't you don't learn one and then move on to the next, kind of like you do with math. Granted, those build a little bit too, but with English, they're so intertwined that the inference scale sort of brings it all together. Were you able to take what you saw about Tessie, to say that change in character, and draw conclusions about what might happen at the end of the story, why she um, acted the way that she did, how her change in character, in fact, changed the tone of the whole story? It was kind of when she went, whoa, 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 you didn't give him enough time to choose the piece of paper he wanted. It was kind of when that happened that we started to go, wait a minute, something's not right here. There were little clues here and there, smiling humorlessly and nervously. They smiled rather than laughed, those sorts of things. But Tessie Hutchinson's change in character and her development as a character, she was a round character. She was a dynamic character. She's not static or flat. Um, Allowed us to draw some inferences. So when you make those inferences, um, that's where you are rating yourself as a 4, a 3, a 2, or a 1. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed the lottery and this week's story and lesson.